I'm Glenn W. Worthington, and this is James Archer. He found more diamonds here than anybody else ever has at the Crater Diamond State Park, and probably ever will. James didn't know how many diamonds he found. I asked him, and he said, I found so many I've lost track, but estimated around 5,000 diamonds. We know on record here at the state park, he registered over 95 diamonds that weighed over a carat. Those were the ones he registered in his name. In my opinion, he sold a lot of diamonds, carat plus diamonds, and others that he found, and the people registered them in their name. So James found a lot of diamonds for two reasons. He was here more than anybody else, about 6 days a week, and worked about 10 hours a day, and he worked hard when he was here. And yeah, besides being here a lot, he worked hard while he was here. Those are the two reasons James found more diamonds than anybody else ever has or ever will. I've got my James Archer shirt on today, and I'm proud to say he was a friend of mine. Oh, the word proud comes to mind. The people who worked here said he used to come in every morning. He was always cheerful. He was a good Christian man. He worked 6 days a week, and then he took Sundays off and said, Sundays is the Lord's day. And so he didn't work here at the Crater on Sunday. He'd go to church with his family. I'm the guy who literally wrote the book on diamonds in Arkansas, and this is the first edition of my book, and that's what the front cover looks like. And the second, third, and fourth edition of my book has this cover on it. But this book was all written and ready to go to press, self-published in April of 2003, and James Archer died in January of 2003. He was a friend of mine, and I dedicated the book to him. And I also, had stories in here. I mean, here's a picture of James working, just sitting down, scrubbing mud through a half barrel wash trough, and working hard. He had gloves on up to his elbows and just scrubbing and looking. This is a rare photo of James Archer all cleaned up. He went to Little Rock and was shaking the hands of then Governor Mike Huckabee, who later ran for president of the United States. I also want to show you this. James was an icon. When people would come here from National Geographic or anywhere else, big newspapers and things, the park would say, who should we talk to? And they would steer them towards James Archer. This is a magazine, National Geographic, they did in, I think, March of 2002. Yeah, March 2002 issue came out, and here's a 2-page spread. We sold diamonds on the square in Murfreesboro for 20 years, and this was our shingle we hang out for people to see, and they would go in and buy uncut diamonds from the Crater. And so that was our sign, and the National Geographic liked it, and they made a 2-page spread. Well, also, if you can find one of these used somewhere or order it online, it's a good article, and it also has a good photo of James Archer. He's here searching through diamonds. He'd look in there and say, come on, be there, rock. Come on, be there. But James was a pleasant man, and the people who worked here said that every morning he'd come in smiling, and he'd buy his ticket, and he'd say, I'm just so proud to be here. Now, if you're not from the South, you don't realize that's the expression, I'm happy to be here. So that's just an interpretation from one Yankee to another. Here in the third edition of my book, I've got a picture of James Archer scrubbing like he did so much. He would dig and wash and find diamonds. And here's a picture of him. It's this picture here. I think Amber Hamilton took it. She used to work here. And James is sitting there, and he's got diamonds out in his hand. And James found a lot of lovely diamonds. We bought a 5 1/4 carat yellow that he found. Absolutely gorgeous. We also bought a 1.45 carat black diamond that he found here, the Black Beauty diamond. And then we later resold both of them, but you know, we had them for a while. We used to buy diamonds from James. We lived near the Crater Diamond State Park. If he'd get done finding diamonds, register them. If he needed money for gas or whatever, groceries, he'd come by the house and say, I found some diamonds, do you want any? No pressure to buy, and I never bid him down on his price. I said, how much do you want for it? If I can afford it, I'll buy it. And if your price is too high, I can't. But James always had his price to where we could buy them, and then we would package them up with the certificate of authenticity showing it found by James Archer, and then we'd repackage it in a souvenir box and sell it through the store on the square. I want to tell you, when I first met James Archer, I came here in the summer of 1978, and everybody, all the regulars, were digging in the pig pen area. That's at the south end, and there was a wash trough down there. And I saw a black man, quite a bit older than me, come in, his arm in a sling. It was tied up like this, and his hand was all bandaged up. And he took a shovel and he would dig by hand with one hand, shovel, digging, and carrying buckets, take it over to the pig pen, throw it in his screens and wash it. And I met the man. We were all friends down there, everybody, you know, working together. And he said his name was James Archer. He lived in nearby Nashville, Arkansas. And what he had done for years at that time was he would work all day in a sawmill, and when he got off at 3 o'clock, they probably started at 6:30, 7 in the morning, didn't get off at 3 in the afternoon. Then he would drive from nearby Nashville, about 15 miles away, over here to the Crater of Diamonds, buy a ticket, and go in and work for a few hours. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had worked out in a hot sawmill all day, at 3 o'clock I'd go home and shower and rest, but not James. He was a hard-working man and determined to find diamonds. He loved the hunt. He loved to find diamonds. And it was more with him, more about finding the diamonds than keeping the diamonds. When he passed away, he only had like 6 or 7 diamonds, and it was those that he had registered that day. And it's not like, you know, he had a whole bunch. I didn't bring it with me. I regret now that I think about it. My wife and I have a small yellow mackerel diamond. That's a naturally triangular flat diamond that James Archer found. We've got that in our collection. We also have a small 3-point diamond. It's nothing special, but it was registered the last day of his life in January of 2003. So we've got 2 James Archer diamonds in our collection. So to go back to the man that had his arm in a sling like this and all bandaged up, digging and looking, carrying with one hand, it was James Archer. And talked to him, and he said while working at the sawmill, he got his hand cut in a saw and just all mangled up. And the doctor told him to go home and sit and recuperate. Well, James Archer was not one to sit. And so a day or so went by, he had to get out to the Crater of Diamonds. And he just worked hard. He worked harder with one arm than a lot of guys do with 2 hands. But anyway, he dug and washed, and that's when I first met James Archer, and I was impressed with how determined he was to find diamonds and how hard he worked at it. I'm standing in the museum at the Visitor Information Center, and here's this picture of James that you can see when you come here. And really, really a nice guy. Look, his hands, you can see, are a little bit, you know, arthritic and things, and he had problems ever since that saw mangled his hand. You know, it didn't heal back right, but that didn't stop him from looking for diamonds for decades more. So I met him in 1973. He had already found a lot of diamonds at that time. He passed away in January of 2003. So 30 years later, he was still digging, washing, looking for diamonds. I'll tell a couple of stories about James Archer. I'm in the Crater of Diamond State Parks Museum in their Visitor Information Center. And when I was here in 1978, they were digging the footing for this. And if you're familiar with construction, this is on a slab, concrete slab, but they took a little backhoe and just dug a ditch around the perimeter to pour concrete for the base, for the foundation of the visitor center. And they had this dirt all piled up there, and James Archer came by and he looked through it, was picking through it, and he asked the workman, can I have some of this? And at that time, there was no boundary. You paid $2 a day to get into the Crater of Diamond State Park. This is an old man story, and I'm telling you, I'm an old man. $2 a day to get into the Crater of Diamond State Park, and you could dig anywhere in their 911-acre state park. You were not restricted to a 37-acre search field. So James came up here, was talking to the workmen, saw this freshly dug stuff piled up there. It looked kind of gravelly and it looked good to him, and said, can I have some of this? Oh yeah, we've dug that and thrown it out. Well, we're up on the hill and the crater is down there. There should be no diamonds here unless you know the history. The Glen Martin plant, which is post-World War II, was built just right over here by the park, just south of the visitor center, just down the hill in the trees. Well, when that plant was in operation, they would go and get ore from the search field and bring it up here and stockpile it right here where this visitor center sits right now, and then they would feed it into their plant. Well, that's how there were diamonds here. James did find diamonds in the gravel dug from the footing around the visitor center, and so I'm confident that when visitors, 210,000 visitors walked through the visitor center last year, we're walking on concrete, but there's diamonds under our feet. Even though we're off the diamond search territory, the diamonds were brought here and stockpiled. And when the plant shut down because they just didn't do well, they didn't have a good operation, that ore just sat here for years and it rained on it and washed the silt away, and diamonds were concentrated on the surface, and James Archer figured it out and found diamonds here. Very smart man, very nice man, very humble man. He talked to everybody. Everybody came and talked to him. Said, oh, you must know what you're doing. And he found a lot of diamonds. I'll say this about James too. He's lost more diamonds than most people have ever found. He would find diamonds, have them registered, put them in a medicine bottle, and he'd put he'd wear bib overalls. Yeah, he's got them on right there. Bib overalls, and he'd put the cards in the pocket. He didn't really care about keeping them in good shape. They'd get wet and they'd get muddy and all. But anyhow, so he'd have the diamonds in a medicine bottle with the lid locked so the diamonds wouldn't come out. You didn't want the lid to come off. A prescription bottle, I meant to say. Well, James would be working, and that prescription bottle would come out of those bib overalls, and he'd be working and not even realize, hey, there's not that little rattle going on anymore. Somebody else had come along and find a prescription medicine bottle with a bunch of little diamonds in it, and then they'd keep them. So unfortunate, but James found a lot of diamonds. In addition to the 1.45 carat black diamond he found, he also found about a half carat black. So he found 2 blacks out of his 5,000 or so diamonds. The half carat black, he was out in the parking lot, and some people, he was putting things away, ready to go home after a hard day, and somebody said, have you found any diamonds? And he said, yeah, I sure have. He said, oh, could we see them? Okay. So he poured his medicine bottle out in his hand, and one of the diamonds was a half carat black. And some kid, thinking he's funny, hit the bottom of his hand like that, and all the diamonds went flying. It's like, why be nice to some people? You know, I'm showing you my diamonds, and then you scatter them. So he went in the parking lot and searched on his hands and knees and found all the diamonds that he had already found them all. The only one he didn't find was that half carat black. So, don't know whatever happened to it. But anyway, we had the 1.45 carat black beauty diamonds for years, and then we sold it to Jim and Shelley Horan. It's in the Horan collection. But I've got stories about James, could go on and on. There was one he told me that I really liked, and let me tell you again, another. So most of his diamonds he found by digging and washing, but he also found some by surface searching. Well, one time he'd been digging He'd been washing in the shade, washing through his stuff, and he would see a glint out there in the sun, out in the search field. And he'd think, you know, I ought to go over and see if that's a diamond. And he was washing, and then people would come and go and talk to him and walk right by that shiny thing. He thought, well, it must not be a diamond, or they'd have stopped and picked it up. Anyway, after about 3 days of that, he was washing and working and trying to find diamonds there. He thought, people keep walking by it, but it's bugging me. I see that thing shining over there, so I'm going to go check it out. And he walked over there and bent over and picked up a nice diamond on the surface, and everybody had been walking by it for 3 days that he knew of. So anyhow, just great stories and a great guy, and really loved him and miss him. And anyway, I just wanted to kind of do a little James Archer remembrance, and they do have a plaque down at the Diamond Discovery Center on the lower level about him, because he was such an icon here and found so many diamonds, and a great man as well. So thank you for listening to this old man's stories about this old diamond miner, and thank you for watching our videos on Genuine Diamonds in AR YouTube channel. We appreciate you commenting and liking our videos as well.